Polyticks. How you feeling? Me personally, I'm doing all right. I'm getting by in this economy. And what I've been trying to do is ramp. So let's start with my intro music. It's stock. It's what do you call royalty free sound that I found that I thought was, quite patriotic and epic sounding. And when I first started posting my videos, it wasn't giving me any kind of strikes for it. Now it's flagging me for copyright. So I may have to reimagine that and write my own intro music. We'll see. I don't think it's gonna ping me because it is rights free. It's not striking me. It's not giving me a negative strike. It's just like giving me a copyright notice when I upload my videos. So maybe some of y'all know more about that. And I don't think it's gonna hurt my monetization or anything, but whatever the case, that's something that I need to fix. So I've been trying to crank these videos out a lot more, not even trying to crank them out a lot more, just I guess inspired to do them a lot more just because there's so much stuff going on right now that's crazy. And so the Tucker Carlson thing, him being fired, that was kind of a big thing that I wanted to revisit today. Just because when I put my initial piece out was before I really knew much about it. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that I thought was interesting. And I don't know, today's conversation may not be super long, but it's also, this isn't going to be one of those one-off videos. I'm going to cover a multitude of topics. So this is going to be a full episode right now. So let's start by talking about COVID. Now, when I first started doing this thing, I started on Rumble because I was worried that I was going to be censored heavily for the content I was doing. So what I've noticed is a lot has changed, and now you're allowed to say things that you weren't allowed to say a couple of years ago that you'd be deplatformed for. I mean, even 6 months ago. So I caught this bit where the folks on Rising are discussing a Joe Rogan clip. So this is going to be another one of those, let's watch someone else watching a clip together. Let's all of us watch a clip of someone watching a clip.
This narrative that there's only one way to deal with this, and that this way is actually going to stop it. Well, if it is going to stop it, why do you care who gets it? You should just get it, because if you get it, that means that no one else is you're never going to get it. Everybody who gets the shot is never going to get it. That was the narrative.
By the way, that's how a vaccine is supposed to work. If you get the measles or the MMR shot or the TB shot, I had to get all these shots as a kid. You don't get those diseases. So this quote unquote vaccine is a lot more like a flu vaccine, where every time I got the flu vaccine, I got the freaking flu.
That was a lie from the beginning, and now we're realizing that it was a lie. Everybody realized it was a lie now. Like I was talking to someone last night that had COVID really bad after being vaccinated, like really bad. 2 weeks wrecked.
So I have a
listen to this
great friend, and his daughter, college, gets the shot. She ends up in the emergency room, and she's got blood clots on her liver. And they're all like, what do you think of it? Well, she rows a lot on the row team, and like, are you really
real?
You're really gonna believe that's what it was?
Well, people do anything to not blame it on the vaccine. Like when there's an injury, like people want to find all sorts of other reasons.
That was Joe Rogan making some comments about vaccine injuries, which come as new NBC News reporting details the allegedly thousands of Americans who say that they have symptoms of life-altering tinnitus ringing in the ears after they took the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, as of Sunday, at least 16,000 people had filed complaints with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that they developed tinnitus or ringing in their ears after receiving a vaccine. The CDC conducted internal reviews of the reports. They did not find any data specifically suggesting a link between COVID-19 vaccines and tinnitus, according to an agency spokesperson.
Isn't it interesting how the media always gets to these stories like 6 months after everyone else has already discussed them heavily or been censored for talking about them on social media?
Despite the CDC's findings, researchers like Shaowen Bao, an associate professor at the physiology department of the College of Medicine at the University of Arizona, Tucson, are beginning to dive deeper into the possible link, according to the NBC News report. Bao, who has been studying tinnitus for over a decade, was convinced to look into the issue after getting messages on Facebook. After surveying roughly 400 cases from the online group, along with ringing in their ears, participants reported a range of other symptoms, including headaches, dizziness, vertigo, ear pain, anxiety, and depression. Significantly more people first developed tinnitus after the first dose of the vaccine compared with the second. So far, Bao believes that ongoing inflammation, especially in the brain or spinal cord, may be to blame.
So this is all quite preliminary. The CDC looked into this.
Even he has to kind of be careful where he treads still, because, you know, who knows what you can and can't say. And why would you want to live in a world like this? I think the biggest thing about COVID that upset me is the idea that if you have an opinion that's different, you're just not allowed to talk, and that there's this authority on science that can shut you down, and has a religious like backing of faithful followers, and that's the complete antithesis of what science is. It's all about questioning and constantly trying to find a better way. It's not faith-based like religion. Anyway, let's listen to a little bit more of this.
And didn't find the evidence that you might like to see, but they also didn't release the full report. They have done that with the myocarditis claim, so you can judge for yourself. Not able to do so in this case. I was interested and frankly kind of heartened.
I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is the first one they pulled from the market for causing blood clots. So, I mean, that's not even conspiracy theory. That's well-documented fact. And so it's interesting that this is you have to be so careful to talk about this.
That NBC News, a very textbook mainstream outlet, is taking this concern very seriously. Wrote
6 months after everyone else knew about it.
This pretty good news article about it. Want to apply a lot of caution here because tinnitus, again, ringing in the ears, is
because he doesn't want to lose his channel.
That actually a lot of Americans suffer
Apparently,
from.
25% of Americans suffer from it, and there's this
to some degree of it. May not be severe tinnitus.
Sure. And these people are registering severe symptoms that apparently manifest after their first shot,
including that doctor looking into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's worth noting that a lot of people are going to experience these symptoms anyway, and that it might be you have these preconditions for tinnitus that are perhaps exacerbated by the vaccine. Obviously, we don't know. People are looking into it. But it is worth noting that the CDC hasn't found a link yet, although, as you pointed out, they haven't released the review the way they have in the context of myocarditis and other side effects. That 16,000 complainants, which is about what the number we have here, equals about 1 in every 15,000 vaccinated Americans. So again, the odds are relatively low still. Mm-hmm. And again, 25% of people are going to.
But that's just the number of people, who actually went ahead.
So they're going to go into the details here and talk a little bit more about it. And I think there's a couple things to note, and I just want to clearly lay out my take on all of this. First of all, with any drug, there's going to be side effects, and there's going to be people that are affected by it. It's different for everyone. everyone has a different body type. People live in different climate. People, their bodies evolve differently. My little brother works in personal training, and he explained to me this this thing called SAID principle, which is specific adaptation to impose demands. So if you do something a lot, your body adapts to it. So we're all different, and that right there is the argument for bodily autonomy. For, hey, don't force people to take the vaccine if they don't think that they need it. And our psyche was so raped by propaganda over COVID that everyone, you became a murderer if you even questioned it, or if you even had questions about it. Look at what they did to Aaron Rodgers. This is a guy who uses his body for a living, and he expressed some concern, and they just turned him into the most evil person alive, a questioning science, Trump supporter, anti-vaxxer, blah, 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 blah. And I think what disappoints me the most about all this stuff is I'm glad that NBC is allowed to report that there are side effects now, because the reality is, like I said earlier, people are going to be affected by any drug. There's going to be side effects to anything. And that doesn't mean that, it wasn't largely safe for most people, but it's just this instant jump to demonizing people who question authority is it's real intense to me. And I've always been a person who questioned authority. So, if a priest is trying to rape you and you're not going to question it, you're not someone that I respect. So there's that whole side of it. It's just kind of one of those things where people are divided on it for the wrong reasons. And the reality of it, much like with abortion, is it's none of your business if someone wants to get vaccinated or not, because if a vaccine works, it protects you. That's how I always understood a vaccine. I mean, think about what the initial definition of a vaccine was, right? What a vaccine does is it triggers your natural immunity to build antibodies against a virus. So they inject kind of like a dead version or an inactive version of a virus into your body so that your immune system attacks it and builds an immunity to it. That's how vaccine science works at a basic level. So, and then people will come out and argue, well, this is different. Yeah, and it doesn't work, obviously, because everyone who got the vaccine still got COVID multiple times. In fact, the people I know who got the most boosters got COVID the most, just like with the flu vaccine, which is why I was a skeptic from day one. And I still had to get vaccinated because I was afraid I would lose my job if I didn't. And then I lost my job anyway. That's a whole other story. But hundreds of thousands of people went through the same stuff I did. I think there's recent reports of some of the healthcare workers in New York actually winning their case and getting their jobs back. But when you're exposed to a disease and you have a natural immunity to it already, you don't need a vaccine. In fact, why even take that risk of the side effects when you already have the immunity? And that's what I argued. And I was called names and demonized by my own family for that, and called stupid, because they're so brainwashed by this narrative. And now, now that all this stuff's coming out, I don't expect them to apologize to me or anything, but it's very telling that they wouldn't, because if I had done that to them and this information started to come out, I would be like, hey, look, cousin, look, brother, look, mom, dad, whatever, family member, I'm sorry. I was wrong. And I'm sorry that I came at you in the way that I did, because I was not, I was misled, frankly. No one's going to say that. Most people just want it to go away. They just want to pretend like it never happened. But unfortunately, I think the effects of this are going to be with us for a long time. So let us move forward with the next item, shall we? So one of the things I wanted to talk about again, or in more depth, is Tucker Carlson's firing. So my boy right here, Perpetual Shadow Band, Spittin' Venoms, had a great point here. He said, from the outlet that brought you such classics as Saddam definitely has WMDs and Hunter Biden's laptop has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation, wants you to know all the times Tucker Carlson has peddled conspiracy theories. And so here's a New York Times tweet. And we've gone over my feelings on the New York Times, but Tucker Carlson is leaving Fox News. We analyzed 1,150 episodes of Tucker Carlson tonight to see how he promoted extremist ideas and conspiracy theories as the host of the most watched show on primetime cable news. So, right, I think the lead that was buried in that tweet is right here. The most watched show on primetime cable news. Okay. And we all know that the New York Times has zero credibility, right? I mean, Caliphate, remember when they did Caliphate? They ran this story called Caliphate. It's completely fake. They smeared Cenk Uygur as a KKK member or a KKK supporter when he was running for Congress. They lied about the WMDs and the Iraq war. He brought up the laptop, which we just found out was complete nonsense, which I knew was nonsense, but you know, people, no one views media skeptically. A lot of people don't understand how bad the press is. So, you know, for you people, you'll learn. Hopefully you'll get up to speed with the rest of us. But so what I didn't, when I originally covered Tucker's firing, I neglected to remember some important things about Tucker. And so I think it's Aaron Matei, but Jimmy Dore, I mean, God bless you, Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore has one of the best shows, I think, on anywhere for news. But let's watch this for a minute because
Tucker Carlson and Fox News part ways. From the Hill, Tucker Carlson has parted ways with Fox News, the network said on Monday. We thank him for his service to the network as a host and prior to that as a contributor. Carlson's last show was Friday, the network said. Tucker Carlson was Fox's top-rated primetime host, netting an average of more than 3 million viewers per night, the most of any pundit on cable television. His departure from the network came less than a week after Fox agreed to pay $787 million to settle a defamation lawsuit brought by Dominion Voting Systems over coverage of former President Trump's.
So I want to note that there is a desperate move in the press to link Tucker Carlson to this suit with Dominion election systems. And Tucker Carlson was one of the few people, and I think they get into it in this, maybe I should jump forward and show you that actually called out Sidney Powell and said, hey, you know, if you believe that the election was rigged, we want to see evidence. And she couldn't provide evidence. And Tucker Carlson said, you know, if this is true, it's one of the biggest crimes of the century, but you got to have evidence. And she couldn't provide evidence. And so Tucker was one of the he was one of the few people who opposed. Anyway, watch Aaron Matei.
False claims of voter fraud in the company's software. But here's this from the LA Times. The decision to fire Tucker Carlson came straight from Fox Corp chairman Rupert Murdoch, according to people familiar with the situation. Murdoch is said to be concerned over Carlson's coverage of the January 6th, 2021 protests at the Capitol, where the host has promoted the conspiracy theory that it was provoked by government agents. So that's the line that people close to Rupert Murdoch are apparently giving, that this was over Tucker Carlson's coverage of January 6th.
Okay, now I could not find the clip on Tucker, but I did a piece a while back where I photoshopped Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer wearing Karen wigs, because after Tucker broadcast the footage of January 6th, kind of showing that, hey, there's more to this story than just insurrection. People that did bad stuff, yeah, they're criminals, but there were plenty of people there that weren't trying to foment insurrection. And it's pretty obvious that this was not a coup attempt. There was just some rowdy people who deserve, you know, whatever to be prosecuted for whatever crimes they committed, but everyone else was just there to protest peacefully. So I tried to find, I'm not just trying to like self-congratulate here or create this weird MC Escher like show within a show. I just wanted to show you this clip because I could find it on my own channel. So, and Republican leadership in Congress, condemned Tucker and said this was not good. So the point of my clip was that both Democrats and Republicans in the Uniparty were against Tucker Carlson showing this footage, which is really odd because all he's doing, they're not claiming that it's edited wrongly. They're not claiming, they're just like, hey, you can't show that footage. So the whole uniparty narrative is kind of really rearing its ugly head at this point. There was one particular response. Well, there are a couple things I wanted to cover as a follow-up to this. So the first thing is, let's watch what Chuck Schumer said in response to this. This is a little bit from Tucker Carlson's follow. This is the clip I wanted you to see.
In free countries, governments do not lie about protests as a pretext to gain more power for themselves. They don't selectively edit videos for propaganda services and then lie about them in fake hearings and show trials. But that's exactly
like I'm smoking with myself.
And every member of Congress should ask why that happened. But Democrats in the Senate, the Democratic leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, is not asking why. Instead, Chuck Schumer went on the Senate floor today to explode and to say that showing that video, evidence of wrongdoing by the federal government, including the security forces, the police department that Nancy Pelosi personally controlled, letting the public see any of that is a threat to democracy. Watch.
Last night, millions of Americans tuned in to one of the most shameful hours we have ever seen on cable television.
Ever.
Fox News host Tucker Carlson.
One of the most shameful hours we've ever seen.
In a lengthy segment last night, arguing the January 6th Capitol attack was not a violent insurrection. I don't think I've ever seen a primetime cable news anchor manipulate his viewers the way Mr. Carlson did last night. I don't think I've ever seen an anchor treat the American people and American democracy with such disdain.
So you get the idea. That is really, really sickening to think. If that's the case, if Schumer's and McConnell complaining about Tucker Carlson is what got him pulled off the air, that politicians can just have someone they don't like pulled off the air because they're saying things they don't like without any kind of a trial, without any kind of an examination of the information. Hey, Schumer, how did Tucker manipulate people? Let's see your examples of the manipulation that happened here, because all he's doing is giving a complete picture. You're the one who manipulated people. The Democrats in Congress hired a TV producer for those hearings. They are the ones manufacturing a narrative, and they're upset that someone is able to counter that narrative with a wider view of the picture. No one is saying, and Tucker at no point said that there was not, people committing violent acts or doing violent things. There clearly were. We have video of it. But the other side is there were a lot of people that were unfairly demonized. And it wasn't this crazy, the way that the media selectively showed you only the crazy stuff. So you thought it was this insane insurrection. I know people that were there firsthand, and they said what Tucker was showing, like, hey, yeah, there were some people getting rowdy. It looked like even maybe they were being antagonized. They were having, rubber bullets shot at them and being riled up. But also most people were just there peacefully protesting. There's footage of Alex Jones warning people not to go into the Capitol. And then you have this Ray Epps guy who, for some reason, 60 Minutes is trying to lionize as if he's no problem, even though there's footage of him urging people to go into the Capitol and people going, Fed, Fed. I haven't watched 60 Minutes interview with him. I've seen them running advertisements for it, but I'm willing to bet it doesn't have that footage in it. Maybe I should do some coverage on that. Anyway, let's listen to a little bit more what Aaron has to say about Tucker's firing.
Certainly, this was a surprise to Tucker Carlson because here he is on Friday night at the close of what turned out to be his last show.
And I'm especially grateful for the pie. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Employee of the week. We're just make it of the year. Tyler Morrell, Coco's Pizza. That's it for us for the week.
So this is a guy, I saw this guy on, what is this guy on social media, but basically he tripped a guy who was running from the cops. He's a pizza guy who the guy had carjacked and had like bailed, and he was like running through this area and the pizza guy tripped him and the cops got him. So that's who this guy was.
We'll be back. By the way, the entire episode of Let Them Eat Bugs, not quite as good as pizza, streaming now on Fox Nation. Use the promo code ORIGINALS for 30 days free. And we'll be back on Monday. In the meantime, have the best weekend with the ones that you love. And we'll see you then.
Whoa. Now get your pizzas and get out.
Now, can I just jump in and say that I challenge the veracity of that claim by the LA Times, or what Rupert Murdoch says, that the real reason why they're firing him is because of.
I don't disagree with Jimmy on this either. Even though I was showing you that Schumer footage, I wanted to show that footage to give the context because that does seem like it could be, what the deal is. But this makes a lot more sense to me than the political thing, the money.
His January 6th coverage. That's not why they're firing him for several reasons. The biggest one was that he finally brought on RFK Jr. and they told the truth about Big Pharma. Big Pharma funds news to 70%, and so I'm guessing that was the last straw. I also know that there is a split inside the Murdoch family, and Rupert Murdoch has been wanting to get rid of Tucker for a while, and so. I guess there was just enough things, and I think that the 70% advertisers coming down on them, Big Pharma, I think that was all it took. What do you think, Aaron?
Well, Jimmy, here's that clip you're talking about. Here's Lee Fong reporting that Tucker Carlson last week ripped Big Pharma spending hundreds of millions of dollars on TV ads and news outlets, routinely parroting drug industry talking points. Is there a single example of a CNN, MSNBC, or other Fox News host ever discussing TV advertising corruption?
No.
And here's what Tucker said.
And try this at home. Ask yourself, is any news organization you know of so corrupt that it's willing to hurt you on behalf of its biggest advertisers?
Wow.
Anyone who do that is obviously Pablo Escobar level corrupt and should not be trusted.
Wow.
What would that look like? That level of corruption.
Wow.
Well, imagine that the Trump administration had made it mandatory for American citizens to buy MyPillow. That's one of Fox News's biggest advertisers. Imagine the administration declared that if you didn't rush out and buy at least one MyPillow and then at least another booster pillow, you would not be allowed to eat out. You couldn't re-enter your own country. You couldn't have a paying job. MyPillow, they told you with a straight face, was the very linchpin of our country's public health system. Now imagine as they told you that Fox, as a news organization, endorsed it, amplified the government's message. Imagine if Fox News attacked anyone who refused to buy MyPillow as an ally of Russia, as an enemy of science. And then imagine that Fox kept up those libelous attacks, even as evidence mounted that MyPillow caused heart attacks, fertility problems, and death. If Fox News did that, what would you think of Fox News? Would you trust us? Of course you wouldn't. You would know that we were liars. Thank heaven Fox News never did anything like that, but the other channels did. The other channels took hundreds of millions of dollars from big pharma companies, and then they shilled for their sketchy products on the air. And as they did that, they maligned anyone who was skeptical of those products.
I think it's cute that he thinks Fox News didn't do that. You don't think that they take pharma money, Tucker? Come on, maybe not during your show, but come on, dude.
At the very least, this was a moral crime. It was disgusting.
By the way, I'm probably ruining any chance I'll ever have of having any advertisers on this channel. I mean, I don't even have 200 subscribers yet, but
But it was universal. It happened across the American news media. They all did it. So at this point, the question isn't who in public life is corrupt, too many to count.
Who is
The
it?
question is who is telling the truth?
Oh my God. No one. I didn't see this. No wonder they fired him. Are you kidding me?
So does
He laid it out. He's giving the game away. And he's the #1 news show on it. And the reason why Tucker Carlson is able to tell you this truth about how the advertising game works in corporate news is because they took away all his advertisers. And so now
I
he's
remember
free
that
to say that kind
for
of stuff.
racism or whatever.
But apparently he wasn't, because the hammer came down from the top. And this was, well, again, let me throw it to you, Aaron. What do you think that this was?
Well, so we had the clip there. He's challenging Big Pharma, but also nobody on cable news was even close to him, comparable in challenging the war state.
Right.
Not even close. No one covered the issues that he did. And we'll get to that in our next segment. He also featured leftist voices like us.
That's right.
Which nobody else would
Nobody would bring on. And the reason why me, you, Glenn Greenwald go on Tucker Carlson, because MSNBC, CNN, ABC wouldn't bring people on who had an anti-war message or wanted to debunk Russiagate. Even Democracy Now! Stopped bringing people on to debunk Russiagate, right? They stopped bringing on you.
So what basically happened is Tucker's willingness to report things despite the power structures not wanting him to report them finally got to the leadership at Fox, to the point where, think about this, they had to fire their most popular TV anchor. That is heavy. That is wild. Think about that. Think about how they're probably going to lose a lot more money by firing. I mean, they're definitely going to lose a lot more money. They're going to lose huge amounts of viewership. Tucker Carlson was the most popular person on TV in that slot. He was the most popular pundit on TV, more popular than Rachel Maddow, more popular than Mehdi Hassan, more popular than any of these people. I mean, I don't even know Hannity. I don't even know who else is popular in that world anymore, because Joe Rogan kind of owns it at this point. And it's like, when you watch, if I try to watch scripted television now, shows like Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel or, one of the Jimmys, or Stephen Colbert, it's really bad, because the podcast world kind of it's so much more organic. It's just hard to watch that stuff anymore. It just seems so fake, it doesn't, it's so anyway, you can see now that Fox obviously didn't fire Tucker because of the Dominion stuff. And actually, I want to let me share this again. I want you to see this clip that these guys pull up about the Dominion stuff, because that is a thing that a lot of people have said to me, that Fox is retaliating for losing that Dominion lawsuit, or they had to settle.
They stopped bringing
of leftist media. And for all my disagreements with Tucker, immigration, China, domestic policy, it's just a fact on certain issues, really important issues, like Ukraine, neocon policy, the Syria dirty war, Julian Assange, censoring dissenting voices. He was more accurate and adversarial than anybody else on TV, and even in most leftist media. It's sad, but it's true.
News is something someone doesn't want printed. Everything else is advertising.
And
okay, hold on.
Fighting the black socialists.
Yes.
Yeah, he was
$90 million from its market value. And even though the Dominion settlement was more, Fox will ultimately pay less because they can write off some of
they're going to get a tax cut break.
Fox is going to replace him with Dylan Mulvaney.
That's exactly where the bottom line. It's just about the bottom line.
Fox going to replace him with Bill.
Tucker's stance against militarism influenced his firing, which I think it did. Then this companies are not just there for their profits; they're also there to enforce the state line. That speaks to what Max said about this being regime media, whether it's Fox News or MSNBC.
And journalists,
see, the problem, and this is why I keep hammering on this Smith-Mundt Act thing, is We have state media here in the US. We just don't know it. The difference between, and Jimmy said this repeatedly, the difference between places like China and Russia is they know they have state media. The US we think a lot of people here think it's not.
You've noticed with the Twitter files and other things, they're not there to tell you the truth about anything. Just like with COVID or the war or the Twitter files or censorship, that the journalists in America, 99.99% of them are there for narrative control.
Yeah.
And they can't wait to do it. And so
instead, our leaders demand that you shut up and accept this. We have a moral obligation to admit the world's poor, they tell us, even if it makes.
Okay, I want to find where he talks about the election lawsuit. Here it is. Okay, so this is what a lot of the liberals online are like. Tucker got fired for election denialism, and Fox fired him because Kyle Kulinski said this, that Fox got rid of him because of this election lawsuit. And watch, this is the reality on that.
Tucker Carlson calls out Sidney Powell. And this was the lawyer who was, close to Trump and pushing all this stuff about vote rigging by Dominion. Calls out Sidney Powell, saying he asked her for evidence to support her election fraud claims, but she never sent us any evidence despite a lot of requests, polite requests, not a page. And here he is.
We took Sidney Powell seriously. We had no intention of fighting with her. We've always respected her work. We simply wanted to see the details. How could you not want to see them? So we invited Sidney Powell on the show. We would have given her the whole hour. We would have given her the entire week, actually, and listened quietly the whole time at rapt attention. That's a big story. But she never sent us any evidence, despite a lot of requests, polite requests, not a page. When we kept pressing, she got angry and told us to stop contacting her. When we checked with others around the Trump campaign, people in positions of authority, they told us Powell has never given them any evidence either, nor did she provide any today at the press conference. Powell did say that electronic voting is dangerous, and she's right. We're with her there. But she never demonstrated that a single actual vote was moved illegitimately by software from one candidate to another. Not one. So why are we telling you this? We're telling you this because it's true. And in the end, that's all that matters, the truth. It's our only hope. It's our best defense.
Now,
so there you have it. I mean, the idea that he was fired because of the Fox Dominion suit is ridiculous. He was one of the few people on that channel who actually said, "No, we're committed to the truth. We don't have a political agenda here. We just want to know what's true and what isn't." And when she couldn't provide data, they're like, "Bye, lady." So, on that note, I got another great little bit to share with y'alls. What I wanted to talk about is I want to start doing this new segment called Never Forget. Because I think that especially in this day and age, things are moving so fast and there's so much news happening and people are watching TV or watching the internet and just kind of just moving along without really thinking back on how things happen. And I wanted you to remember a good friend of ours who came and went in the media and was taken very seriously by quite a few people. And I think it kind of is one of the best examples of this pattern in the Trump era, where anyone who's against Trump for any reason is awesome and a great person. And the media at large just kind of goes, "Yeah, Trump's so bad. What do you got to say that's about this guy?" And I'm not even saying that Trump's good. I'm not, two things can be simultaneously true, that Trump is bad and people that think Trump is bad are also bad. That can be true. So let's talk about your boy, Michael Avenatti, former Stormy Daniels lawyer. Let's watch a little bit of Rachel Maddow.
Joining us once again is Michael Avenatti. He's the attorney
Once again,
for Stormy Daniels. He released a 7-page
that
document
implicates
on Michael Cohen's bank records yesterday.
Michael. So here's what's interesting too. At this time, Michael Cohen was a piece of shit, but now Michael Cohen has switched sides and he's testifying against Trump in court. So now he's a hero.
Where did you get this information about Michael Cohen's bank records?
Well, just like journalists don't disclose their sources, attorneys aren't required to disclose theirs either. It's covered by the work product doctrine.
And journalists don't disclose their sources unless their source is Jack Teixeira, military, or Julian Assange, or
And we're not going to disclose where we got the information. But again, it's 35% accurate. So we're going to stand behind it.
And you may dodge this as well, but was the source of some of this information suspicious activity reports? We know that the reason
look at the news scroll at the bottom. Our report appears to be 99.35% accurate on Cohen.
Mr. Cohen's one bank that was associated that he used for some of these transactions did file suspicious activity reports related to his trend.
So anyway, this guy was such a hero on the MSNBC circuit. He did every show on the network regularly. Watch this.
The attorney for Stormy Daniels, Michael Avenatti, joins us now. Michael, first of all, can you tell us where these new documents came from?
New documents.
Summary we produced, but as far as the information that is that we used, that we based our summary on, we're not going to disclose where that came from. It's our work product. But look, here's what I will say. As of this morning, we have NBC News that has independently verified what we said. We have the New York Times who's independently verified what is contained within the document. And I think there's 2 or 3 other independent news organizations that have confirmed the veracity of what we set forth in our summary document that we issued yesterday. So we stand behind what we put in the document. It's 100% accurate. And that's that.
Yeah.
And look, let me
now notice how it went from 99.35 to 100%.
Say this, to the extent that it's not accurate, the president and Michael Cohen should clear this up this morning. They should release the bank statements this morning.
So if they are accurate, and NBC, by the way, our reporting is that our reporting showed that they appear to support the kind of the transaction, so it looks highly likely.
Okay, we don't need to get into the weeds on that. Here he is on AM Joy.
Is the president still associated with Michael Cohen? Is he continue to consider Michael Cohen someone he can hold in confidence?
I know that the president has worked with him as a personal attorney. Beyond that, I don't have anything else to add about the release development.
Is Cohen still the president's personal attorney?
I'm not sure. Do I have to check?
I wanted to ask
I only speak about White House.
Remember when Sarah Huckabee was the Karine Jean-Pierre of the...
Really? That artful dodge came same day the Justice Department revealed that the president's personal lawyer and longtime fixer, Michael Cohen, is under criminal investigation for his business practices. The New York Times reports that on Friday, Donald Trump did the one thing you should never do when your lawyer is under criminal investigation. He called Cohen just to quote check in. As attorneys for both men went to court to try and stop federal prosecutors from using materials seized during Monday's raid.
So he called them and they were probably being spied on.
Cohen's offices and his hotel room. And join me now, Stormy Daniels' current attorney, who we know is still her attorney, Michael Avenatti, and civil rights attorney Lisa Bloom. Okay,
it's your boy, Michael Avenatti.
My elements here, Michael, trying to figure out where to go first because so much has happened in the last just 24 hours. So CNN reports that the FBI has seized recordings between Michael Cohen and the former attorney for your client. What does that mean to your case and or the federal case?
Yes. So anyway, you get the idea. How does this timeline end? This timeline ends with Michael Avenatti sentenced to 14 years in prison for stealing millions of dollars from clients. And this is December 5th of last year. So when AOC comes out and talks about how Fox is propaganda and MSNBC's not, and Fox is uniquely evil, or uniquely misleading in some way, just never forget your boy, Michael Avenatti. Someone told me that this is a white supremacist symbol. I think that's ridiculous. It means A-OK. Here's a picture of Obama doing it. Is he a white supremacist? It's ridiculous. So that's going to be a recurring segment on the show. Hashtag never forget. And we're just going to never forget. So I think especially with COVID, there's a lot of stuff to go through. Never forget, how these people spoke. Now it's kind of like, oh no, we didn't. I saw a clip of Trudeau. I was saying we weren't trying to force people to take the vaccine. No, we were just like, hey, you should do this. It's crazy how quickly things get memory hold and how quickly people forget. For someone who smokes as much pot as I do, I have a very, very strong memory. So watch it. So one of my favorite things to watch is Aaron Matei and Katie Halper's Monday morning, where they do a recap of the weekend talk shows, because I think the weekend talk shows are kind of, I know like people that I kind of respect will be like, oh, I watch Meet the Press or, these types of shows. And they're just, Chuck Todd is literally the biggest ass clown on television. The guy is, I mean, I could go off for hours. I should do a whole piece on just him. But I think Katie and Aaron do a good job kind of recapping some of the ridiculousness of some of these shows. And one of these pieces that they did recently that really stuck out to me was this one about these congressional people, these people in Congress doing war games for China, for a war with China. And it completely, Kurt Metzger actually said this, but it completely reminded me, even before I heard Kurt say this, of Dungeons and Dragons, right? So watch some of this for a minute. This is great. They even have, you'll see. You'll see. I don't want to ruin it.
Would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion.
Yes. President Biden last fall saying for the first time that
it sounds like someone like squeezed him to get him to say like, yes, yes, yes.
Love that clip because it's like he's answering the most serious question possible. Like, would you go to war against another country that also has nuclear weapons? And he answers it in the most like sheepish, confused. He sounds confused.
Right.
And he sounds like, it's not the kind of tone of voice you want to use when you're speaking about going to war with any country, let alone a nuclear power. Yes.
I know that was a little unceremonial.
And then, of course, classic Biden, his aides had to walk that back.
Right.
Because it's not official U.S. policy. At least it's not stated U.S. policy to go to war with China over Taiwan, even though it's de facto U.S. policy. So he was just being honest. But I guess his confusion came from the fact he couldn't remember at the time whether he was allowed to be honest.
Right, exactly.
That question or not. So he was just like, yeah.
Like, what are we saying? Yeah, what are we saying?
China invades Taiwan, the U.S. would send troops to defend it. It's an invasion many experts predict.
What I love about corporate news is you'll never see anyone on corporate news go, do you think this is a good idea? Should we really be spending all this money on weapons? Do you think there's any connection between us flooding other countries with weapons and the mass shooting problem here?
Which could
You'll never see that
happen in this decade. We got a fascinating inside look this week at how members on the House China Committee are gaming out war scenarios. In the sky, on the sea, China staging combat exercises, a show of force, a warning that a potential blockade of Taiwan could be coming. The Chinese army.
Like even her voiceover, it's like my substitute teacher is doing the news from 3rd grade, and she's got this really self-important kind of cadence. So she's like, we're wargaming out scenarios. Like, I'm informing you of this important thing, when it's really, I'm just doing propaganda for our war state and constant never-ending war, because we flood everywhere with weapons in the name of profit. I hesitated a bit on that. I wanted to be concise.
Even releasing this simulation of how they'd attack the nearby island, a self-governed democracy that China claims as its own territory.
I wonder if other countries do that. Like what, Puerto Rico, a self-governed territory that the U.S. claims as its own.
But on Capitol Hill this week, lawmakers staged their own simulation.
Tonight is not about a desire for war. It's certainly not about playing frivolous games.
It's about prevent war games.
Trying to commit
Prevent war games.
I get it. That's a fun game. Prevent war games.
When we play Dungeons and Dragons, we don't play it to fight dragons, man. We play it to prevent fights between dragons and warriors, bruh.
War games.
These aren't war games. These are prevent war games.
These dorks acting out their fantasy of a war and feeling tough from like the congressional chamber have to, realize how ridiculous they look. So they have to pretend as if they're trying to prevent. It's a prevent war game.
Right.
We're gaming out how to attack China so we can prevent war with China.
It says hair man.
When I
was like, why does it say hair? It's because they froze the video, before the C completely faded in, but it says hair man. Love that. Represent Mike Gallagher. Probably another R there too. Hair man. He does have great hair. We'll give him that.
I've told the story before, but it really applies to so many political development stories. Where one time when I was in 3rd grade, there was a rumor in the schoolyard that people were throwing rocks. We're not even sure if it was true. So me and my friends developed a group called the Rock Stoppers, where and we gave each other code names, and we were like, the name of our group was to stop people throwing rocks.
When I first heard this, when I first heard Aaron going off about this, I thought I should turn this into a remix for sure. I might still have to do that.
Sorry. And we started doing it, and we couldn't find anybody throwing
Rock Stoppers.
Rocks. So we ourselves started gathering some rocks.
Wow.
And what we would do is we started gathering the rocks and kind of and started practicing throwing them. But the way we justified it to ourselves is that these were like defensive rocks.
Right.
Someone else So the Rock Stoppers actually became the Rock Throwers.
Rock Throwers.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't know why.
Because we had to justify our existence.
Exactly.
We were now a group, and group mentalities and have incentives to keep the group going and give yourself some purpose.
Perfect metaphor.
So much like Congress, they're a group. They're not really focused on any real issues. They serve their donors. Their donors are the military-industrial complex. So they have to serve their purpose too, which is to actually generate war. So how do they justify it? They're the war stoppers.
Right, but they're really the war throwers, the war starters. For some reason, it went into my head. Remember this game, Operation?
Yeah.
I don't know why this came into my head, but when they're talking about war games, I immediately kind of thought of we're not engaging in war games. We're doing stop war games. It would be like if you played Operation and you're like, we're not playing Operation, we're playing Stop Operation.
That poor guy in Operation does not look very.
He does not look very well. Yeah. Well, that's why they had to pretend that the goal of it was to stop the operation, not to actually operate.
I think she just thought of Operation because it's related to military operation.
This clip. Is there more of
this? In 1980s. Yeah, there's more.
Mike Gallagher and ranking member Raja Krishnamurthy set up the exercise with the Center for New American Security.
Yeah, like Martha Raditz's cadence just reminds me of a substitute teacher who's trying really hard to make it known that she's saying something important. Like, and they did the thing at the Congress place where they showed the weapons that they might use if China was to invade Taiwan.
This game is going to be a Chinese invasion of Taiwan set in
Center for New American Security. It's a classic,
Wonder if it's anything like the Center for. So that what was that thing called? The PNAC, the Project for the New American Century, was that group that had like Wolfowitz, Rumsfeld, and all the guys who did the Iraq War.
Weapons industry funded think tank, very close with the Democratic Party, especially, but it is bipartisan, and they've done these war games before. Remember.
I mean, when I hear these types of organizations exist and they're close to the Democratic Party, it just hammers the nail even further that the neocons are now the Democrats.
Like we played
because that's a neocon thing, and it's just migrated over to the Democratic Party.
A clip from Meet the Press of a war game with China.
Yeah.
I believe that was CNAS as well. And
CNAS and PNAC, the Center for New American Strategy or whatever, and then Project for the New American Century.
Center for New American Security. And
Center for New American Security.
This is what they do. This is what they do. It's grown babies simulating war. That's what this is. Acting out their fantasies of a war.
Right, like I said, it's congressional Dungeons and Dragons. They think it's their way of mentally justifying the billions and billions of dollars we were funnel overseas.
Pretending they're not.
Yeah, all to serve their donors.
Right.
It's a game indeed.
In 2027.
What exactly do we know right now about their mobilization effort?
Members from both sides of the aisle coming together, politics set aside. There's Virginia Republican.
Politics set aside. Uniparty. No difference.
Isn't that beautiful? Doesn't that bring a tear out? Coming together.
Yeah.
Putting politics aside to simulate a war with China. It's just so touching. It's moving. So I just knocked over my
Yeah, you got so
Go, Aaron.
emotional about it.
And Massachusetts Democrat Jake Auchincloss, the members taking on the role of advisors to the president.
What have we communicated to expats and students from China?
This is part of what you get to decide.
That's Stacey Pettijohn has seen.
What do we communicate to expats? Expats? Did you just say expats? Oh my God, I've always wanted to use that word. This is amazing. She's the dungeon master.
Your fellow from CNAS acting as the game master.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs can't pick up the phone and talk to his PLA counterpart.
That's the hairman.
Unfortunately, General Holmes is cut off.
Retired General Mike Holmes is playing the role of chairman of the Joint Chiefs, laying out to members what military options there are.
The biggest benefit from fighting from a distance is you can preserve and protect your forces.
But diplomatic.
I wonder if I wonder if they just do this so China can see it. They're like, see, look, guys, we're planning it out. We're coming at ya. We got a plan. Meanwhile, China's like, yo, we already know your entire plan. We recorded it through the chips back doors that are in all your phones.
And economic
Look how much
options
fun they're
on the
having.
table as well.
So let's cut there. I think that kind of stuff, watching that kind of stuff, it's like, what really? Are you serious? That's what our tax dollars are going to? There are a million problems in this country that need your focus, guys, and you're playing Dungeons and Dragons in Congress. So the last thing I wanted to touch on real quick is more of a praise for the Biden administration. And it's rare you're going to see me do this. The whole point of news talk is to be critical of power, right? So that's the goal, be critical of power. But I wanted to end on a positive note because the Biden administration did pass an infrastructure bill And that's something that AOC mentioned in the bit I did on her that I kind of glossed over, because she's right. That is a successful thing on any level, to pass something like this. This is what we need more of, though. And that's a pretty 1.2 trillion. That's in comparison to how much we've sent to Ukraine. It seems much better. So let's admit that. I want to try to be fair and give praise where praise is due, and compliment the work of the people in Washington when they're doing good work. And this is good work. Top line, President Joe Biden on Monday signed into law one of the largest infrastructure packages in U.S. history after months of bipartisan negotiations, intense political infighting, shoring up $1.2 trillion in funds, including $550 billion in new investments for the nation's bridges, airports, waterways, public transit, and more. Here's what you need to know about where the massive new spending will go. Roads and bridges, headlining the 2,702-page bill, spending roughly $110 billion of new funds go toward improving the nation's roads and bridges. $110 billion. I think that's less than we've sent to Ukraine so far. But hey, it's a good start. Public transit. The package also includes the largest ever federal investment in public transit, allotting $39 billion to modernize systems, improve access for elderly, disabled, repairs. I don't know how I feel about this. 5,000 rail cars and thousands of miles of train tracks. I think that we should probably be building high-speed rail, or in advancing that. Let's see what this says. Amtrak legislation. I mean, Biden's an Amtrak guy, so that's a handout to his people, I'm sure. The legislation marks the largest investment in passenger rail since the creation of Amtrak's 50 years ago, with $66 billion earmarked for high-speed rail. There we go. Hey, good job, Biden admin. We like that. Broadband internet, tacking on to billions authorized by last year's American Rescue Plan. The infrastructure bill includes $65 billion to bolster the country's broadband infrastructure. We like that. Electric grid and energy, though many clean energy measures were cut from the bill to satisfy spending-weary lawmakers. See, this is politicized, but regardless of how you feel about climate change, and Justin and I talked about this in our right versus left thing the other day, this is the kind of investment we need to be making. Even if you think climate change is a hoax, right? We do need to be better. I mean, why dump pollution into the atmosphere, into the air we breathe? Why pollute our water and air if we don't have to? Even if you think climate change is BS. So I like that. Electric cars, buses, and ferries, in addition to $7.5 billion for the nation for standard electric vehicle chargers. We love it. We love it. Clean drinking water, following high-profile water supply crises plaguing cities like Flint, Michigan, and legislation for great rivers and lakes. Among the bills, more than $50 billion for water infrastructure improvements. Airports, more than $25 billion allocated to help modernize America's airports. Road safety, the deal invests $11 billion in transportation for safety programs, including a new program to help state and local authorities reduce crashes and fatalities. Normal funding, in addition to the $550 billion in new investments. The package also includes roughly $650 billion previously authorized funding for roads and other infrastructure, including nearly $300 billion for the Highway Trust Fund and $90 billion for public transit over the next 5 years. So this is from, I tried to pick a source that would be a little critical to the Democrats. So this is from Forbes. So this is kind of a right-leaning. I think I see Forbes kind of right-leaning, business-minded, a little more Republican-leaning publication. And this is how they ranked the Biden infrastructure bill. I'm sure MSNBC totally sucks its dick. But this is good. And I think this is another thing. I don't want to just be out here yelling at power all the time. I think that our government and needs criticized. Let's look at this. I err on the side of the individual over state power. And I definitely want to be critical, because when you look around, everything, most of the corporate media is advertising. Most of them are not doing critical stuff. But that said, I also want to look at things rationally and go, hey, I'm not out here trying to overthrow the government or anything. I'm trying to make things better. I want life to be better for everybody. That's why I support a national healthcare program, a public healthcare program, like European countries have. I personally think that will solve, that is the core of so many problems in this country, including gun violence. I don't think that we'll ever be able to ban guns or clean up guns in this country because of how flooded our country is and how weapons minded people are. And I don't think that's even necessarily a bad thing. But I do think that having a public healthcare system where people with mental illness are taken care of and there's a safety net and people don't feel like the world is closing in on them will reduce a lot of this, because a lot of it is desperation, and it's people that are suicidal that don't have anything to lean on or anyone to help them or anyone to talk to. And once you fix that problem, then it becomes a situation where you don't have people, because let's face it, these people who are doing mass shootings are suicidal. They're not out there, they're not murderers. They are suicidal. They're depressed enough that they want to kill themselves, and in the process make a spectacle out of it because of how American, media and psyche works. But anyway, point being, I think that I want to highlight, I don't want to be one-sided. I want to highlight when the Biden administration does good things, as critical as I am of them, because I want to encourage them to do more of this kind of thing. That's what we want to see, and it feels like we have to fight tooth and nail for this kind of stuff. But also, another thing to do is look at this in contrast to stuff that Trump did or that previous administrations have done, right? I think the Obama administration did a relatively good job with this sort of thing, but they also, quietly ramped up the war state where, it's like, hey, guys, I'm not even against military. I just think we need to be much more sensible about it. I don't want to see stories where there's $12 billion pallets of cash like the one in Iraq disappearing, or like what's going on in Ukraine right now where there's no oversight. I'm not even against, helping countries that we feel need helped in that department. Military is one of the few things that we still do very well and at scale. But, we got to get to this point where we understand that the America First crowd is not the America Only crowd. Like, we need to take care of ourselves and our own first and foremost, and then we can go, hey, well, now that all of the poor kids in Detroit are eating, maybe we have a couple bucks to help Ukraine with their war. I'm being way too optimistic here, but you get the idea. Anyway, thanks again for listening. Thank you, everyone. I sincerely enjoy interacting with y'all in the comments, and this has been this whole experience for me. I just started doing this a couple months ago, and I really enjoy it, and I'm really grateful for each and every subscriber and listener, people that respond. I try not to be I'm really not one of those people who be like and subscribe after every, it doesn't feel right to me. So maybe I'll grow slower than other people. That's fine. At least it'll be genuine growth, and the people that jump on board, people that are listening to what I'm saying or interacting with me on any level, are people that really want to be here, and they're not just going through the motions or whatever. And no disrespect to people that do that. I think I'm not making any money off this, so my mentality is probably a lot different than someone who has 1 million subscribers and they're doing like churning this stuff out and trying to get higher numbers and everything. Obviously I want that, I'm not going to lie, who doesn't? Everybody wants to have a large following, and a large following and audience is powerful. But I don't think it's sustainable unless you do it organically, and you do it by being yourself and being honest with your people about who you are, and being honest about the ideals and values that you represent. Because once you start once you start betraying those values, you end up with like a young Turks situation. And I saw the guys on Do Dissidents were talking about Kyle. They're like, do you think Kyle would really have the audience he has now if he had started doing this now? He just happened to, what their premise was that he was lucky to kind of grab that wave of Bernie support, because people needed a voice like that to hear. And I think that's true to some extent. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons Jimmy Dore is so huge, but I think Jimmy Dore kind of took that whole Chapo Trap House crew, because those guys were kind of on a come up, and then they kind of just, I don't know what happened with them. They just didn't, they don't produce enough content, or they don't. Jimmy, I think, is much more prolific, I guess, in the way that he puts out content. And I really like his format where he'll do the live stream and cut it up into bits and kind of share the little bits with you, so you don't have to watch the whole thing to get some of the core chunks of it. And I try to do that myself. So hopefully the quality continues to improve, and people are enjoying the conversation, and everything continues to go as it has been. I really appreciate you, and I hope you're doing well, and take good care of yourself out there.